Question: is there a level of hydrogen gas that is dangerous to breathe? What up, all my instrumented peeps? This is Tyrone Hubbard, and we're here to do a Q&A video on this particular question, which is basically, is there a dangerous level of hydrogen gas to breathe? And so I'm going to go ahead and cover a few points to kind of clear up any confusion that could be around this. And let's go ahead and kick it off. Okay, so I could have took this question in a number of ways. First would be dealing with hydrogen flammability, and also would be, is there a certain level of hydrogen gas that could be administered to where you can displace oxygen, enough oxygen that could be damaging to your body or cause something like hypoxia. And both of those are legitimate, but I think in order to really understand this question within its context of the hydrogen research and of hydrogen inhalation products on the market, we kind of talk about some fundamental facts around hydrogen and its flammability concentration. So typically what's referenced many times is hydrogen's flammability concentrations in the presence of oxygen, which is 4 to 75%. But what is less referenced is hydrogen's flammability concentrations in the presence of ambient air, or just air, room temperature air, which is 18 to 59%. Some people reference 15 to 59%, but by and large, I see 18 to 59% is a more, that's the one I lean towards as a source. And so how do we reconcile those two concentrations, and how does it translate to people breathing hydrogen gas within these studies, or people breathing hydrogen gas at home? And so typically in the studies, they're going to try to administer the gas, generally speaking, most times under a 4% concentration. There's typically administer 1 to 4% H2 within these H2 studies, by and large. So they're keeping it H2 at a concentration that is not flammable at all, and H2 has been seen to be clinically effective at these levels. But there are different concentrations that are used within the studies, from 42% H2 inhalation, 66% or 67% oxyhydrogen, and 99% H2 concentrations that are being administered within the studies and done safely. So how are they doing this? How does this pertain to these two fundamental facts around hydrogen's flammability concentrations? So let's move on to the second part of the question, understanding this info. Okay, so considering the facts I just mentioned around hydrogen's flammability concentrations, there's a few more key details we need to discuss, or facts we need to discuss, 3 in particular, before I can actually answer this question and give you a solid answer. So first would be the characteristics of hydrogen gas as a gas. It is the smallest and lightest gas within the universe, and is highly diffusible in air, which basically means that it mixes with air rapidly upon release into the atmosphere. Number 2 would be that these systems typically administer hydrogen gas through something what's called a nasal cannula. And these they look just like this. Nasal cannula that go around your ears and into your nose for you to breathe hydrogen gas. Most systems on the market that you can purchase administers a hydrogen gas with a nasal cannula. And these nasal cannula typically have significant losses. So they're going to lose a good portion of the gas that is being administered. And so they can be upwards of 50% or more can be lost by administering the gas via a nasal cannula, just due to their efficiencies. And so then number 3, the third fact would be, is the large gas exchange we have when we breathe. So typically, depending on a male or female, we're going to breathe about 12 to 16 times per minute. We're going to inhale 12 to 16 times per minute, or inhale and exhale, I guess, 12 to 16 times per minute. And we're going to have a gas exchange, meaning we're going to exchange gas between 4 to 6 liters of air per minute. So we have a large gas exchange, and that's at resting breathing rates. So just to summarize and go back over it, hydrogen's the smallest gas in the universe, and lightest gas in the universe, and it's highly diffusible in the air. We administer the gas typically through nasal cannulas, And lastly, we're going to have a large gas exchange when we breathe. So in essence, between these 3 points, we're going to lose a significant amount of hydrogen gas when we're breathing via an inhalation system. At home, and typically there can be certain losses. It's going to be less losses in the studies, but it's going to be far more losses when you're doing it at home. Okay, so now considering all of this, I'm going to give you an answer for what is the most dangerous, or what would be a dangerous level of breathing at home based on these facts. All right, so there has been some preliminary studies or data that's been done on this. In particular, this study actually found that hydrogen could be administered safely up to a 15% concentration. At 15%, there was a small pop or combustion that wouldn't hurt anyone, and this would have been within the nasal cavity, and above that, there could be harm. And so to try to figure out how to translate this from what you see with home systems, which is, administering 200 milliliters per minute or 300 milliliters per minute or 400 milliliters per minute, these type of gas productions that these hydrogen inhalation systems can administer. When you factor in all the information, if you talk about inhalation dynamics, which is what I was just talking about, how much gas exchange we have, you factor in the losses of hydrogen being very light and buoyant, and you factor in how much gas is being administered by these systems. There's been individuals and colleagues that I've worked with, researchers that I've worked with, have actually kind of run the numbers on this, and it requires a significant amount of hydrogen gas to be delivered to a nasal cannula while we're typically just resting or normal breathing to produce a 10 to 15% concentration within our nasal cavity. Far more than what we actually might think. It requires 1.5 liters of hydrogen gas, or 1,500 milliliters per minute. 1.5 liters per minute or 1,500 milliliters per minute of hydrogen gas, if you had a pure H2 unit, funneling that to a nasal cannula to produce a 10.22% H2 concentration within the nasal cavity, or breathing at into our lungs, considering the gas exchange and the losses typically seen with breathing from these systems at home. That is a lot. There's not very many systems on the market that can supply that much hydrogen gas to even get to this level that would be potentially dangerous, right? And so to actually get to 15%, you need over 2 liters of hydrogen gas being administered through a nasal cannula with typical losses seen with our breathing dynamics to actually get to a dangerous concentration within the nasal cavity. And there's not too many systems, if any, that are supplying this type of levels of hydrogen gas on the market. There are very, very few. And typically, there are hospital units that can supply somewhere around 2 liters per minute of hydrogen gas. So, and at those levels, it's not enough displacement of oxygen to become dangerous to cause hypoxia or something like that. You typically need to get below, we breathe 21% air, oxygen within the air. And so that's what our body's like. And before we actually even run to anything towards hypoxia or get pretty close, it has to be down somewhere around 17, 18%. And to get to dangerous levels where we might suffocate or something like that, you got to get basically almost down to 10%. So these type of levels, even administering at 2 liters per minute, or even 1,500 milliliters per minute, does not displace enough oxygen to cause that type of hypoxia or any damage like that. So this would be my answer to sum it up. You would need at least 1,500 milliliters per minute or 1.5 liters per minute of pure H2 administered through a nasal cannula to generate a 10% concentration within the nasal cavity, and to breathe within our lungs with typical resting breathing rates for an average adult. And most systems on the market don't supply that, but that would be considered the highest level, or towards the highest level of safety. That's probably what I would suggest, not to go past that level. But 15% is where they actually saw any kind of combustion that didn't hurt anyone. So like the maximum amount, the ceiling, would be somewhere around 2,300 milliliters per minute or 2.3 liters per minute of pure H2 supplied to a nasal cannula to generate a 15% concentration within our nasal cavity based on averages. Now, these are general rules. This is not a recommendation for everyone. Obviously, even with humans, we all have slightly different breathing, respiratory dynamics and how we breathe. And so technically, if you were going to administer the gas within a study or by a medical professional, they would actually know what your breathing dynamics look like to administer a particular concentration of hydrogen to you. But for a general rule, this is what I would say. You need to stay below 2 liters per minute of hydrogen through a nasal cannula before you get to any kind of dangerous levels for combustion, and to get to something where you're going to displace enough oxygen to where you're going to run into hypoxia or some kind of dangerous things. You would need even more than that. Pretty much, you would need even more than that to get to some kind of dangerous level. All right, everyone, I hope that answers your question. If you have any more interest in this question, you can always email me at taiwan@huhub.com, and then I will supply more information of why that is my answer. There's a lot of information involved, by the way. I have quite a bit of studies, different articles that discuss some of these facts in detail. But thank you so much for voting on this Q&A, and I hope it answers your question. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this video. Hit the notification bell for any updates from us putting out new content. And if you want to support us, you can always do so at patreon.com. It'll be in the description of this video. And even if you want to give us a one-time donation, you can also do that. That link will be in the description of this video as well. And we'll catch you next month on the next Q&A. Later.